Hey everybody, welcome to another Research Hub community call. And to get things kicked off today, we're thinking about building a couple of new features here over the next quarter. And one thing that we want to focus on is improving our current post-publication peer review feature. There's a couple of different things that we think we can do here. But one topic I wanted to specifically focus on today is like the utility of anonymity in peer review. And so I think we should just kind of like go over everyone's thoughts here, whether like you should by default be anonymous. Should there be an option between like leaving your name to a review or leaving an anonymous review? Should there be a penalty if you don't use your name attached to a review? Or should we require essentially everyone to have their identity tied to different peer reviews? There's like obviously pros and cons to each of these. Just for a little bit of context, PubPeer is like my favorite project in the space that I think is doing post-publication peer reviews really well. And they give everyone the option of staying anonymous. And even their founder was like an anon dev building like a science product for 5 years before he even was willing to tie his identity to like a peer review publication platform. So yeah, I think there's like a lot of different things to consider and would love to hear what everybody thinks. Molly?
Yeah, I think I like the idea of having the option. I think at least for pre-publication peer reviews, that's how it is right now, where it's like some of the dermatology journals like JAD and stuff. They're like you can click at the end where A for if you want to be known for the review, and then B even if the journal doesn't accept it, and if they send the review somewhere else, do you want your name even there or not? So um, I'm not like in either way in favor or against of if you want to penalize somebody for not revealing the identity or not, but giving the option is at the very least is a good idea.
Cool. Kobe?
Yeah, I just had a question because I'm not sure how these things typically work in real life, but who sets the anonymity level? Like, I know that some journals have like a single blind, double blind. Should that be the choice of the author, or should that be something that we enforce? Maybe someone can shed some light on that.
Does anyone have? You can just jump in to answer Kobe's question if anybody has insight.
Well, I feel like I don't have insight because I don't know what the pros and cons of either one or optional are. And
Well,
kind of think through that.
I guess to answer one of the questions, and maybe other people who have submitted to journals can corroborate this, but like anytime like my papers have been peer reviewed, like they've signed their name to it. And like I, as the person who published, like if somebody writes me a review, whether it's good or bad, and they don't sign their name to it, and I don't even know what their credentials are, like I don't know how to feel about it. Like somebody who has no idea what they're doing writes me a good review. How do I feel about it? Somebody who has no idea what they're doing writes me a bad review. How do I feel about it? I guess as the person being reviewed, I don't know how to feel about a review who I have no idea who it came from.
So yeah, like Lynn said, currently it's like pretty much single blinded. So essentially like you submit and they know exactly who you are as the submitter of the publication. And then there is generally 3 reviewers that are like kind of vetted by like the publishing group. And so essentially as like the submitter, you're trusting that the publishing group has chosen 3 reviewers that are experts in the field and are going to be unbiased in the way that they assess your paper. So like in this situation, it's like you're placing trust in the publishing group to choose those people, but because we're doing peer review out in the kind of the open and anybody can jump in, those people are not really vetted. So I think that's one drawback of anonymity is like unless we have like a really, really solid reputation system already in place, it'll be hard for I think someone that wants to remain anonymous to like be seen as credible to review your paper. And so maybe it could be like something like on a temporal like time span where maybe early on we tell everyone, hey, you need to kind of tell us who you are. But once we have enough people and the reputation system is good, then we can give the anonymous option.
Yeah. One
But
thing.
why do we want anonymity? I don't understand what the value is for something like
Because
peer review.
people won't criticize like superiors in their field. Like there's like professional risk associated with providing not good peer reviews, even good peer reviews, and you sometimes can get more intellectual honesty if the person's identity is hidden, but at the same time there's a lot of potential for abuse as well. And I think one of the big differences between like the standard peer review system and what we're discussing here is someone knows who you are. Like if you do a peer review for a journal, the editor knows who you are. So maybe the author doesn't, but you're not like anonymous. Like if you said something really mean or inappropriate, like there would be professional consequences to it. And here, like in theory, anonymity can entail like basically a Reddit username, like pseudonymity, where you can not really have any real life consequences for saying something that may not be, within like a positive spirit of like productive criticism.
Well, wouldn't the account potentially be subject to, like, even if it's anonymous on the back end, the account would still be subject to some sort of disciplinary action, right? So I don't understand.
Yeah, so that is an option. Like we could have anonymity where like people can tag a review for being inappropriate or something like that, and then there can be like consequences that like come back to that person. Yeah, the design space is big. We can do a bunch of different things.
I mean, I think the clear thing is just to make it optional and then to like deal with the consequences of it to like the best extent that we can, right?
One thing I want to add is in the current system, there's also an option some journals provide for the authors where if there are clear conflicts, they can say we request that these people not be on the reviewer list. If they're like a competing lab or if they're, vying for the same grant or something. So that criteria is available for even the authors. And going back to the anonymity part, in addition to what Patrick mentioned, I think a few meetings ago we had discussed that if you wanted this platform to be like, DeSci and open to everybody, then the credentials should not come in the way of if somebody is doing a legit criticism of some paper, and or the other way would be that we start vetting for who can do the review or not, right? Then we will have to do that. But at least an option of it is a must, because there could be like a chairman of some big department whose paper is getting criticized, and there's a resident or a postdoc who's trying to criticize it here on ResearchHub and get in real trouble real quick.
Anton?
Yeah, I mean, the way it is, it kind of feels like there is no downside to have an optional anonymity, right? Because if you really think about it, there is no identity verification process right now. So anyone could just create an account under any name. So if we don't have strict identity tie into our account, then why enforce it, right? And if you think about it, if a person decided to post a review anonymously, if you don't have an anonymous option, they will just not participate, right? So you're reducing the number of users who will use the feature.
Plus, I mean, at least at present, we have editors who are already checking for comments that are not like, not appropriate, and removing those or flagging those. So the same can be done for peer reviews.
I think maybe the sweet spot here could be in having a sort of like a backend where, kind of like ResearchHub can verify what are your credentials, and you are basically, free to choose if you want to be anonymous or not, so that you can basically be held accountable for what do you say, what do you publish in the open.
That's how journals essentially do it. Like the reviewer can sign their name when they send you your review. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. But the journal like always knows, that it's a person in the field who knows what they're doing. So that would be the typical like journal method.
Okay, because I never saw any name associated to my reviews, so I didn't have
On the last paper that I got accepted to Cognition, like one of the reviewers, the first reviewer signed his name, and I actually was able to contact him and like work through like some of the issues he had with it. Like, so yeah, like people do.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I think as you said, there's no downside to it, I think, and this is also a way that, you know, in a way, in this way, we don't have to vet anyone. Like we can just, like, you know, have our database or who's making the comments and the reviews and letting anyone participate, even if they don't have, you know, any credential, but their criticism is, you know, constructive. You know, why not having, you know, the platform? And that can be obviously, you know, tied to the reputation. So there's a lot of things that we can do there, associating with the reputation of a user.
Jeff?
Oh, Ricardo kind of like hit the nail on the head with what I was gonna say. I guess just like the one like main concern is with like the anonymity part, and obviously I'm all kind of generally for anonymity in terms of like kind of like DeFi and some other things, but like like the concept of like potential like kind of collusion and like nepotism, like, you know, I mean, it happens in the current system where like your friend's an editor or a reviewer and you submit a paper and like they kind of push you along and like, you know, treat you extra nicely and stuff like that. And so when an editor or peer reviewer is anonymous, you know, maybe their friend submits a paper and, you know, maybe they'd usually give someone a 7 out of 10 on that paper, but it's their friend. You don't know that because they're anonymous. They're just talking behind the scenes, and maybe they give their friend a 9 out of 10 or a 10 out of 10. And I guess in theory that works itself out when you have enough people peer reviewing, where like their 9 out of 10 gets dampened by other editors giving it a 7 out of 10, and so it regulates itself. But again, that's like once we reach scale. So I guess that's just like one drawback to think about with the anonymity.
Yeah, one thing I think about is like why would I not want to have my name tied to a peer review? And like the things that pop up most are like there's professional consequences. And so I almost think like what if there's a cost to like posting anonymously, where like maybe you earn less tokens because you don't have your name tied to it, or maybe it costs you like 10 RSC in order to post something anonymously, or maybe you have to stake coins. Like I like the idea of like if you post anonymously, you're doing it because science needs you to, rather than you're doing it because you want to earn money from it. I'm not sure if like that is a reasonable perspective, but like,
Well, how would you be earning money from posting anonymously though?
Coins. So research coin. So if you post a peer review that's highly upvoted, like you can earn research coin or like get supported for sharing that content. And we could say something where like if you do it anonymously, like maybe you don't earn any research coin for it, or like you earn 50% of the normal rewards, like some kind of disincentive, where I think we'd be better off if like the majority of the time people have their names attached. But like there's certain circumstances that, you know, it's more important to have a correct scientific record. So I almost think there should be cost to it, but not 100% sure about that.
Well, and what if, can the anonymity just be like, it doesn't have to be to the person who's getting reviewed. It could be to just us, you know, someone at ResearchHub as well. You know, like I still think that would be considered putting your name on it if we can verify, you know what I mean? If at least somebody can verify it.
Yeah, it's likely that behind the scenes we would know who it was, like in our database. We'd have to build some security measures to make sure that that information is very protected, but it would really only be available to people who have access to the database. So not like the average user, the average editor, or anything like that.
Right.
Anton?
Go ahead, Edwin, you were first.
I like the idea of 50%, by the way. Just putting that up there.
Does anybody else have any thoughts there before we move on, like about having a cost associated to being anonymous?
I think it's reasonable.
It could be. I mean, I think we are only focused on one frame here, that anonymity is only exists to protect the users from the potential consequences to their job life, but we also can view anonymity as just a quality of life feature, right? That makes me think about YouTubers, right? Some YouTubers choose to reveal their face and identity, and some YouTubers never reveal their face and they still produce quality content, right? And some people might be more comfortable producing reviews and without, knowing that they can avoid the associated drama, right? So they can share their opinion. It could be a qualified and accurate opinion. They're just not open to potentially provocative interactions with the user base, right?
Yeah, but this seems a lot more consequential than producing content on YouTube, though.
Agreed.
Yeah, that's why we potentially should consider it even more seriously, right? So if we want this to be a somewhat relaxed experience for people, right, and maybe relaxed in a way that it brings them joy, it doesn't bring them stress in their life, then maybe anonymity is even more important than for YouTube channel.
Well, I think if you're just commenting on a paper, that's one thing. But when you're talking about peer review, I think you have to be held to a high standard there.
I have to agree.
Yeah.
I don't see, especially because, again, we're talking about from the point of view of the poster, but as the point of view of readers, like, what do we make of a review that we have no idea who it came from? Like, yeah. I just don't, I would not be interested if nobody vetted this person. I'm not going to be interested in the review. That's just me personally, but I have no idea where it came from. That's like reading an article without a source.
Yeah, but if it's disincentivized, it almost makes it more intriguing that the person.
It does, but I don't know.
I feel like at the very least, you would, if you previously would not have considered that peer review, the disincentive, like doing it in spite of the disincentive, would mean at the very least you should consider what it has to say. Even if you don't get some credence, as you
agreed.
Kobe?
Yeah, I definitely see the merits of having someone's name associated with a review, because that corroborates who reviewed it, and I think that matters quite a bit. I'm thinking if we go with the anonymity aspect, one way in which it could work is if we also reveal the person's reputation. So if you don't, like, we want to assess credibility, right? So at least you can't see the person's name, but maybe you can see their reputation, and that can go a long way. Just a thought here.
Probably best to put the percentile of the reputation more than the actual reputation.
Yeah, because then they couldn't cross-reference it.
Yeah.
Right, exactly. So you can't cross-reference and be like, oh, very specific. Yeah, good point.
Once we eventually get to like hub specific reputation too, if it's like in the psychology hub, if you see a peer review that says, anonymous user in the top 10% of the psychology hub or something like that, like that's
that would help a lot.
Satvik?
Yeah, my point was, could we possibly have a threshold before which people aren't allowed to post anonymously? So
Totally.
We could have not specifically reputation, because you can raise your reputation by posting a lot of papers and making a lot of simple comments. But what if there was a peer review specific threshold that you could only reach by posting totally transparent peer reviews, and once you clear that threshold, so the community would know that you are credible enough, and then you are allowed to post anonymously. Could that be one way of going with it?
Yeah, we could do it by rep like that. We could also do it by like you have to stake a certain amount of RSC, and we can make the amount something where like you've had to have been around for a while in order to earn that RSC to gain the privilege of posting anonymously. There's like lots of different ways that we could do it. But I like that idea. Malik?
Yeah, coming back to that, like a little bit along the lines of what Satvik said, but we can also do it just as traditional method. Like right now, in order to be a peer reviewer, you have to go through a process through the journal. Everybody has a different format, like, that like JAD is where you have to work with another peer reviewer for a year before you can do it. Other journals are more relaxed, where you must have done this many number of publications before we let you in. So then we can have the credentials checked on the back end, and say, okay, you are good for a peer review, or you can do this anonymously, or something like that. But I mean, again, I don't want to beat the same thing, but I still feel it strongly that anonymity should be an option to the reviewer, so that they don't get harmed in any way or form for saying something about a paper that's written by some big shot,
So I guess to like explicitly confirm this, does anyone here feel like anonymity is a bad thing? Like if we like people should always have their names attached to it. Does anybody hold that perspective? Okay, nice. Like it seems like we unanimously feel like there should be an option for anonymity. And then the question is like, is that available to everyone or only certain users? And how do you unlock it if it's only available to certain users?
What's the benefit of making it available to everyone versus certain users? Because it seems to me like if we're talking about something like you don't want to criticize the head of some, department that you're a part of, and let's say you're, a first year PhD student or even like a senior in college, and you join ResearchHub late. You haven't, developed your profile, or you have genuine insight. I don't see why we want to disincentivize that. I think it makes more sense to say you don't earn as much because you are anonymous than saying only people who've reached this threshold get to be anonymous. That's my perspective.
I think the benefit would just be more utility for ResearchCoin. So it's kind of selfishly thinking of like, hey, how can we convince more people to hold on to it and like want to buy it?
That's probably going to be a small percentage of the market, though. I don't think it would. Yeah. Anyway, go ahead.
Yeah, I agree. I think it would be a pretty small thing. But
I think thresholds would also sort of incentivize more activity on ResearchHub in general. So that could also be a selfish reason to do it.
So you're saying like people would post more in order to get to the anonymity level?
Yeah.
Even longevity, like how long have you been, like sort of like seniority, how long have you been on the platform? Like you kind of like created your account 2 days ago. I don't feel really comfortable in giving you, anonymity. Maybe, just like prove that you want to be on here for some time and then do it. And anyway, I think, out of all the papers that I could potentially review, there's probably like 2 out of 100 where I would feel like I would be anonymous. That is probably, my previous lab or any other person that I know in the field. I can do many more reviews where I don't, I feel comfortable not being anonymous, and then, kind of like earn that status and do those peer review that I wanted to do in the first place with anonymous kind of level.
Anton?
Yeah, just to add in terms of user perception, if you want to incentivize non-anonymous reviews over anonymous, I think it would be better. It would be a more feels-good experience if the non-anonymous review is incentivized more. So you're not losing by going anonymous, you're gaining more by staying non-anonymous. It's the same thing mathematically, right? But the perception is very different. And also, thinking back about Lynn's comment about the authors receiving anonymous reviews, I think it could be solved by filtering, right? So you can sort by, you can only look at the average that's submitted by anonymous reviewers and the average submitted non-anonymously. And potentially, if you're an author, you can just completely ignore anonymous reviews if you feel that way, right?
Yeah, I mean, that makes sense to me. Because, I know for sure I have no interest in completely anonymous, unvetted reviews.
You've got a great point.
You made that very
Maybe it could be a choice, like to post anonymous or not, and we can have like a code of conduct in what circumstances someone can post as anonymous.
Yeah, totally. I think we should definitely have some kind of code of conduct associated with it. We can add it to our like discussion guidelines. Ricardo, you have a great call too with like you need like a time box period of when you have this feature available to you. Like there's a lot of subreddits where you have to have joined the subreddit for like a week before you can add a comment. So that would definitely disincentivize the, oh, I'm angry at this person. you know, like you have to sit on it for a week or two before you have the ability to anonymously send a peer review.
I also noticed that a lot of our incentive for wanting to post anonymous seems to be to like badmouth people. Is that? I mean, hopefully it's not legitimate criticism of science, but it does seem like there's just like a fear of we know we're going to say something offensive kind of a deal.
I think if you look at PubPeer, it happens. Like it's like a real problem. And so, yeah, I'm sure like PubPeer is like the best example of like, you know, professional scientists interacting, you know, both anonymously and non-anonymously. And so it definitely still happens. So I'm sure we'll see it like as well.
Yeah, and in like we're talking about post-publication, but then there is also like in pre-publication, this happens a lot where like just in medicine, there's a medication that's already in market and has a new trial for a new condition that has been, you know, backed by pharma, has a lot of money involved, and 3 or 4 big departments are it, and you get to review it as a physician, and you know how to review clinical trials, you have done it, but you are not in any of those big associations, and you cannot, you know, directly put your name there against that pharma or against that 3 big departments. So it is a recurring theme, at least where I have, you know, reviewed it. I feel like out of 10 reviews that I do in like a quarter or something, at least 3 I feel like I definitely don't want my name on here.
Right, but somebody knows that you're like a vetted person who should be reading these. I'm not saying, when I say putting your name on it, I don't mean that everybody has to know. I'm just saying that like I don't see any value in a review that came from a completely unvetted source where like nobody knows who they are. Like I definitely agree that not every, like there should be the option for not everybody. And if we want to have the completely anonymous option, that's fine. I'm just trying to see how that's any different from like posting a pop news article or like posting something without a source. Like how do we feel as scientists about something that could have come from anywhere?
And
But
I agree
there is
that
an
there should be a
argument.
vetting process that I'm fine with, you know, if we are vetting in some way or form.
To play the devil's advocate, there could be an argument that we should not care about the identity, right? That's a ad hominem, right? We should not care about the identity of the person providing the argument if the argument is solid by itself.
Yeah, I think that's like perfect world. Like that's how it should be, end state. But I think we're in a spot where it's like it's kind of tough to know like the validity of like an argument unless you're like deep in the field. And so I totally agree. Like for the beginning parts of this, it would add helpful context to have like either a rep score or like certain percentage of the hub, you know, next to anonymous peer review.
If we're gonna do the rep score though, we can lay off on it until we've had enough time where people have like done a bunch of posting and everything, and we get a sense of what a rep score actually means on the platform, and then we can go from there. But I think right now it's like way too ambiguous.
It's a great point, and Jeff kind of like said the same thing in the comments section, that the like reputation system is not totally accurate compared to a person's scientific expertise, so it's hard to like fully lean on it. But I think it'll become more robust, you know, over the next like 6, 12, 18 months, and we'll be able to like automate.
Hub specific rep is definitely going to be really, really helpful.
Yeah, I very much agree. Cool. Yeah, so we're about half an hour in right now. So I guess like on the topic of anonymity within peer review, does anybody else have any like final thoughts on kind of like how we should approach this? Doing good. Nice. It's funny because in use article that we're going to discuss today for the Journal Club, which we're moving to next Monday, and Yu's going to actually join. So we'll do a full hour and like present the paper and have a discussion about it. Yu specifically says that all of the users should be non-anonymous. So it'll be interesting to see. He's from the George Church Lab, which is like pretty solid laboratory. So I think there's like a couple different perspectives here. So I'm sure you know, they'll be back and forth over the next like year or so. Cool. Yeah, so the next thing that I wanted to talk about is we're building a revenue generating feature for ResearchHub. And we're trying to think of like the best feature to build. We have a little bit of like different opinions within the team. And so what we're thinking about doing is essentially having a call later this week or next week to list out all of our options for a potential revenue generating feature. And we're going to talk about it as a team and then essentially pick the top 3 and get the community to vote on whichever one they want the most and then make a final decision from there. So what I thought would be helpful for our discussion as like an internal team would be to run all of these different revenue generating features past the people in the community call, and then just kind of like openly talk about them for 10, 15 minutes to give me a little bit more like context during our internal team discussion. So that way I can say like, oh yeah, we talked about this, people like this feature, or we talked about like freemium features and people hated it or something like that. So if it's cool with you all, I'd love to go over the options.
Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, so this is just a list of all of the things that we're going to potentially do. And I can like quickly go over each category. The first is freemium features. So this could be like, hey, you can be anonymous if you stake X RSC, or maybe like if you pay a subscription, you're able to see like what other users like viewed your posts or upvoted your post, kind of like LinkedIn Premium. So this is like the standard SaaS model of like you can use ResearchHub for free, but then if you want like more robust features, you have to pay money for it or stake RSC. The next one is funding. We've talked about this a bunch. This is basically trying to help connect like researchers who need money with institutions and individuals who have money. And then the big kicker here is, in theory, we'd like to help provide patrons of science with some type of like ROI generating asset when they fund science. So whether that's like an NFT or a creator coin or something, we want to help the people rather than just donating money to science. It's kind of more of an investment where they can actually see like a return on their investment for giving money to science. Bounties, we talked about this a bunch. This is like peer review bounties. Kind of an example that Truth in the forum had that I think it was Mohit responded to. You could do something like, hey, please summarize this paper for me, and here's 1,000 RSC. Please like put together a list of references for this specific topic like Jeff did a couple months ago. So this is something we've talked a lot about. NFTs, everybody's familiar here, help like authors mint NFTs and then earn money from it. This kind of goes hand in hand with the funding. I think they'll end up kind of merging eventually, most likely. A paid ELN. So this is closer towards trying to compete with companies like Benchling, where we put a lot of effort into the ELN and make it like very robust for a specific field of science, and then ask people to pay for it. So kind of like the old GitHub model, where if it's open, it's free, but if it's closed, you pay. Article processing charge. This is like pre-publication peer review. Authors pay money. They get peer review, editing services, and some online marketing. And we think we could essentially help to outcompete like other article processing charges. We could do it cheaper, and then authors in theory could make a return on their like APC investment by getting a bunch of upvotes on their papers. Recruiting is something that's pretty interesting. So this would be kind of like AngelList. If you all ever use this tool, it's like an entrepreneurship website where people can find like other people to start companies with. And so the idea here is that like we would find biotechs and academic labs who wanted to hire scientists. And then we'd use ResearchHub profiles as like a way to help connect people with hiring managers. So you could use ResearchHub to kind of demonstrate like your like potential in a certain field. And then based on the content you create, it would help connect you with like potential employers in like your specific subfield. And then FTO analyses. This was a suggestion we just like heard from an advisor. This is freedom to operate analyses. Essentially, if you have a new product and you want to like patent it, you have to check current patents to see if somebody else has already like thought of your idea. And so the idea here is that like if you're a biotech and you want to do a new patent, rather than paying a bunch of money to lawyers, you could pay money to ResearchHub, and like our community would help to do that like initial analysis for you. So yeah, there's a lot of options. Sorry for kind of the rant there, but yeah, I guess to get started, does anybody here have a feature that they like particularly love or particularly hate?
I like the idea of using it to connect like people with expertise to people looking for expertise. I think that could be kind of interesting if people like if there are people who would actually be interested in like paying ResearchHub to help find employees. That could be interesting. The one that I'm definitely most wary of is the premium features. One, because with our user base as low as it is already, that seems like a big jump. And B, like I like how when I share the idea of ResearchHub to people, like right now, I'm in no way like asking them for money. You know what I mean? Like there's no like here's ResearchHub. Like you can either just like enjoy science or maybe make a little bit of coin. I'm just a little bit worried that once a premium option is like I don't know, it definitely changes the taste a little bit. I don't know if other people agree with that.
Yeah, just to hop in here, like one thing that's really important to keep in mind is like corporations over time become kind of like nameless and faceless, and they try to optimize over generating revenue. So I always think about like, hey, Facebook, right? Like their main revenue is through ads. So their goal is to try and like use the data they generate to make the most money through ads. So like always thinking of like which revenue generating feature we pick here, knowing like, hey, if ResearchHub is trying to make a lot of money through this, is it good for science? Right. So like funding, for instance, I think makes sense for us because then it's like ResearchHub is incentivized to get more people to want to fund science, which the end result is more money available for researchers. So it's like a good, aligned incentive. And yeah, I agree, Lynn. Like freemium, I don't love the incentives that gives our company. Is like we want more people to sign up for like ResearchHub, expert, version. It feels not quite as impactful as other revenue models could be.
So
Yeah, agreed.
Are we focusing on like generating revenue a little prematurely? I don't know. I mean, it's just a thought, but it seems like, what do we have, like 100 users or something? It seems to me that we should be focusing on getting more people on the platform and getting their feedback and then figuring out revenue models based on that. Because any kind of revenue model we have right now with the user base we have certainly won't, I don't think, put a lot of deflationary pressure on our currency. I mean, maybe funding, that's probably like the easiest one, especially the connections that we have in the community, presumably. But if we're talking about, putting bounties on things and things like that, how exactly to do that without having more people participate in the ecosystem, I think, yeah, I don't know. That's just a thought, but it seems to me we should be more focused on just like getting people on the platform right now instead of money.
So I think this is a great thought, Edwin. I'm really glad you brought it up. I think it's like revenue changes the organizational incentives. And so, yeah, if we're doing something like freemium features or bounties, now all of a sudden in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, where can I find more people who want to share these bounties or want to come buy these freemium features?
Right.
And so for funding, I think it makes a lot of sense because then in the back of my mind, I'm thinking like, hey, I need to go get more funders to put money into ResearchHub. And then I think that users will come from that. Where if there's like, $1 million that's going to be given out through ResearchHub over the next 3 months to the top scientists on ResearchHub, that's an easy like advertisement for us to put out. I think that people would show up for that.
Yeah, and when people have a really good idea on your platform, but your economics don't make sense, you get a lot of people thinking about how do we make these economics make sense, right? So that's one thing to consider.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally. I think bounties could also work because yeah, there's just it's already happened organically a couple times. And I think there's actually a lot of value there for grad students. If you could like outsource, some of your like kind of manual labor research time to somebody who's more of an expert in the subfield and can do it faster. I think there's like potential there to help grow high quality users just from trying to generate revenue.
Yeah, but I suspect that bounties also, especially with like our size right now, they're only going to, it's going to take a while before people are actually taking cash and putting it in for the bounty system. That's what I think. So.
Yeah, it's a fair point. It's probably unlikely somebody would want to like go to Uniswap and grab some RSC in order to like set a bounty. So it's a great point. Anton?
Yeah, I mean, I follow the same logic here. There is only one of those behaviors already organically happens on the platform, that being bounties, right? And if we were to decide that this is the priority feature, I'm guessing there will be a lot of support features built around it, right? So a UI and everything to make it fancier. And I think that's the most scalable one, right? Because it can start small with kind of, oh, I have a question. Can someone please post a comment that answers this question? That could be just the beginning, right? We could move on to, can someone write a review for me, right? Or can someone post a review to this particular article, or can someone write a post about the topic, right? So this feature, I think, is the most versatile and has the most potential. And if you were to invest your engineering efforts into something, I would pick that one.
Yeah, thank you. That's great insight. Joanna?
Maybe we can have a premium with research coin or some crypto at a certain point. I mean, there are some people who are interested in promoting their coins, and yeah, they could. I mean, we can exchange research coin for other coins or other type of crypto.
I think we're like what Jeff. Have you heard of Olympus Law? They're like a play in the crypto space that you set up liquidity pools with them once you've had a certain amount of transactions in your currency. So I think in terms of setting up like liquidity pairs with other currencies, I don't know that we're quite there yet, but once we get to, I think from like the conversation that I've had with Jeff, once we get to the point where we've had enough of those transactions, then we'll have a pair with Olympus and we can sort of go from there.
You want to kind of, what this reminds me of is something we tried maybe like a year and a half ago, where the supporting feature was tied to exposure of a post. So like if you wanted your post to be at the top of a specific hub, you could support your own post and it would end up like increasing the number of upvotes for visibility's perspective. And so like we would collect, portion of revenue on people who supported their own posts. This is kind of like advertising me though. And like it doesn't end up really being great. Like kind of what happened was people would upvote or support their own posts in order to get more upvotes, and we had like some pretty spammy posts that were at the top because of it. And there's like bad behaviors that could come out of it. So yeah, Jeff.
I kind of wanted to double down a little bit on the bounty one, and it's actually personally my favorite one because I used it on the platform. Two, I think if we have a nice UI to it, like you can easily filter to see like what bounties are open right now, and like if there's a bunch of neuroscience bounties open, then sweet, I'll go through and see where I can help somebody out. And like what came to mind to me was like when I was preparing for my qualifying exam, and I had to like fish through so much like literature and like do this like really like hard work to find out one piece of information where I could have just set up bounties and like had someone direct me to where all the answers were and like where I can get the answers, and it would have saved me just an immense amount of time as a graduate student. And I'm sure undergrad students probably have like a similar kind of thing where they'd be happy to like get some information or clarity on an exam that they're about to take. I really think the bounty feature is like pretty awesome. Even like putting together a review paper, you can ask the community what are some of the like most highly impactful like papers that you want to reference. Like I just think like it spans like from undergrad to grad to postdocs to even PIs.
Yeah, so I agree, and I think just like from our like own internal conversations so far, I think bounties are probably the favorite. We're just trying to like explore potentially all of the options. I guess like to dig into this idea a little bit more, Jeff, like it's interesting that you say like in theory you would want to explore bounties if there were like, bounties in the neuroscience hub. How do we market that? Like how do we find the random like physiology PhD, and like get to them and say, hey, come to ResearchHub because there are bounties here for you that you can complete. That's the one piece of it which doesn't totally click in my mind, is how do we make people who are unaware of like what bounties even are in theory, like come to ResearchHub and be like, oh, I could earn money here. Like,
So do we have a sense of the kind of media that PhD students consume? Because as you know, I was talking to you, Pat, about potentially like working with, and not just like getting them to feature us, but actually having them be partners, science YouTubers. But I'm not sure the extent to which that kind of content is consumed by, PhD students. So yeah, do you guys, as PhD students, do you have a sense of like common types of media that you and your peers consume?
I don't do any sort of like pop media, if I'm being honest. I just stick with like traditional scientific media, I think.
Just work. No, just kidding. I know Grad Cafe, it was like super popular when I was making like applications for universities, but I don't know if it extends, beyond that. Grad Cafe was like super popular, but again, it was just for like application to university. So I was like, kind of like checking with other people, what do they put in their application and so on. But maybe there are some, other venues where they discuss other topics. But if you ask me, like, let's go where PhD meets to discuss science, I don't really know where it is, because like I never really discuss science apart from ResearchHub and within the lab with my coworkers.
There are like career advice people for PhD students who like need help like finding a postdoc or like getting into industry. So I think we could probably partner with those types of people, where maybe like a referral fee or something. Like if they, point people to ResearchHub to earn cash, for doing science, then they get something in return. So it's definitely
Wait,
possible.
I'm sorry. So you're saying the people at a career center at a university would get a referral fee? Wouldn't that create like a weird dynamic potentially?
The people I'm thinking of are like independent. Oftentimes they're like consultants that hold like basically weekend talks on like, hey, here's how you fix your resume, if you're applying to biotech or something like that. Molly?
Yeah, I just wanted to add a little bit to it can tag along with the bounty feature. And when you ask that, where can you find that random physiology person? I think on your list, there was this article processing charge thing for pre-publication. I feel like that would be a good feature we can add now, that like when I try to tell people about ResearchHub and invite them that, hey, can you come on this? And it's about already published articles where they feel like it's kind of an added task on their list, versus if we provide this service and attach it to bounties where people on the hub can get the bounties, or some external person for article that's not published, that the work they actually want to do, where they have to publish this as part of their job, and ResearchHub kind of helps push that along. I would feel it would solve two problems. One, it would move the bounties along, but also bring more crowd to do the work that we want them done.
So I very much agree here, because like it's weird to send a cold email to a grad student and say, hey, earn this bounty, but it's not weird to say, hey, do a peer review. Like that seems like a big funnel where we could cold email people, and like most people I think are like neutral to happy to receive that email. So it seems promising. Yeah.
So can I say something?
Yeah.
So I mean, I don't know, but some of the people who are going to be doing these bounties also may not be grad students, and like we might want that, right?
Totally.
So I think I've had this idea where like some of the more popular science YouTubers, like just getting them, maybe to be an editor, that's some sort of thing, reaching out to them so that they're like more just like integrating the ecosystem. I don't know what the breakdown of their audience is. I mean, it's probably a lot of people who are scientifically literate, but not PhD students, that sort of thing, who actually might be able to contribute to something like a bounty with a specific part of a paper. And I guess I just don't know what the value of that, like how you guys would see the value of something like that, having people like who may not be like our target audience, but with broadly large audiences, sort of just bringing them in our corner and, you know, not necessarily paying them or whatever, but just having them be a part of our community.
I think it's a great idea. I think we probably should make an effort to try and reach out to like scientific content creators and bring them on as editors. Even like I'm thinking about like Eleanor Shiki, and then we had a conversation with another longevity person who agreed to be an editor, but he was super busy, where they do these like YouTube reviews, which include papers. And if they like included the link to the ResearchHub page, you know, like it's a lot more robust because you could have like actual conversation about the paper and how it applies to the topic in the YouTube video. Even like Andrew Huberman is like a big podcast person who does like, citations. So yeah, some people like that would be amazing. And I haven't done any work on my end to try and reach out to them. I know, Edwin, I think you sent me a list of YouTubers. So I can send some cold emails out this week and try and like get a couple on a call, and then just like offer, you know, a potential editor position or just get feedback.
I wouldn't. I mean, you can, but I wouldn't send a cold email. I would like use LinkedIn and reach out to the network instead.
Okay, cool. That's a good idea. I can definitely do that. Cool. I guess we've got like 7 minutes here, and there's one last thing I wanted to talk about. So does anybody have any last thoughts on the revenue model stuff? It seems like bounties are what most people find the most exciting. And then other ones that are like worthwhile exploring are the article processing charge, the pre-publication peer reviews, and maybe funding. I guess like one last thing is like the recruiting topic. Does anybody have more thoughts there? I like this one a lot because there's like a nice positive feedback loop of the more employers that we bring to ResearchHub, the more users will show up to ResearchHub and create good content to get the attention of those employers. And
that's why it appeals to me as well. And it's beneficial, like really beneficial for our users in science.
Totally. It's hard to get a job. It's like the postdoc thing is hard. Even like job listing sites are like not great, like the job archive or whatever. So I think we could actually like make people's lives a little bit better, I think. So
I agree.
Pretty excited about that one. Safik?
So how do science students get jobs right now? Like, what's the model right now that we could be going against?
So there's like industry, and then there's academia. Industry, I think, is like standard company where like Pfizer will put out like a job listing and then ask for people to apply. And then correct me if I'm wrong, but I think postdocs kind of work the same way. Like it'll be like a professor will, you know, put a tweet out or put up a job posting and like run it through their network and try and like get people interested in their joining their lab that way. But it's still like you apply to some like applicant processing service with your resume and like answering questions, then you do an interview and then stuff like that. So I even think like ResearchHub has potential. Like when I went to my PhD program, I like tried to network with professors first to like make it, you know, more likely I'd be accepted. So I like talked to the labs that like I wanted to like actually work in. And so here you could, in theory, like bring someone's paper and like add a valued criticism, you know, so to show off that like, hey, I'm intelligent, I can contribute in your lab. Yeah, it seems like there's a lot of ways that this could be helpful.
Also, is it completely fabricated, right? I mean, is it completely broken right now, or are there any sort of aggregators of these listings as well? Or is it just somebody put out a tweet and that was it? If you missed that tweet, you missed your chance. Is it like that?
I mean, as far as I know, there's no like LinkedIn for like academic jobs specifically, if that's kind of what you mean. Like applying to academic jobs is hard. And like the other problem is there's like, it's also not entirely the same because like, yeah, you can go the traditional route of like applying, but a lot of times if you just like know someone who's looking for a postdoc and they have money, they just hire you and you bypass like all of that. And that's something that we could even like help with. If we can help like recruiters find that like perfect person, you know, they've read some of the reviews they've done, they've read some of their comments, and they're like, hey, you know, I'm at least really interested in interviewing this person based on what I've seen them do here on ResearchHub.
Yeah, totally. I mean,
Yeah.
recruitment's hard. Like to help, for PIs, like to make the process simpler, I think is actually pretty valuable. And then Satvik, I added a job archive is like a scientific job listing board, but I don't think this is just one of them. I don't think there's like a universal one that covers every job available.
And certainly not one that, where your work is just there, your thoughts are just there, etc.
Totally.
I want to go a bit against the tide and support the freemium feature on just like one aspect that is
Sure.
I use LinkedIn. I use the premium as well, and I feel like it's really, really important to be able to have an opportunity to extend your network. And I don't know about academia, but if I knew a friend that knows someone else that could get me into like a super duper lab that I would really love to, even have a chance to talk to the professor, that would be a great opportunity instead of just sending an email that would probably not be replied. So I think there's an added value there. And if we're thinking about, some revenue generation feature, we have to think about a potential added value that we provide as ResearchHub, and that could also be the network, because you can do that on LinkedIn, but LinkedIn is more industry focused, and there's nothing really for researchers and academia people. So just maybe something to think about.
Well, the point you bring up about academic networking is like a point in and of itself that we haven't considered that ResearchHub could contribute to. So, does anybody have any thoughts about that?
Connecting people with collaborators, I think, is something that's pretty cool. I think this sort of fits into the bounties aspect. I know Satvik was putting together meta-analysis essentially, and we had a bunch of bounties for people to do specific tasks within the paper, and so that can be a nice networking mechanism. You're saying, hey, we need a statistician to help with this data analysis, and you can actually go through a bunch of statisticians and pick the one that you want to work with, and then meet them and get to know them. Or I need an expert in my field to review this paper, to give me feedback before I publish it. And then you can I think bounties are a good way to potentially get your foot in the door when it comes to meeting new people.
What
even
about
just
the actual
organically
network feature that LinkedIn has with the first and second and third connections and literal network? I don't know. Ricardo just brought that up, and I mean, if there's nothing like that for academics, I think that deserves at least some thought, right? I don't know.
It's an
in a way.
Excuse me?
In a way, our networking has been happening organically, don't you guys think? At least I've already met multiple scientists that I've enjoyed conversing with. A couple people I've talked to about possibly doing projects on ResearchHub in the future once I'm done graduating. I know I'm not saying we shouldn't figure out ideas to help it along, but I feel the way ResearchHub is set up, it is almost conducive to networking, because you start conversations with other scientists, and after maybe a couple engagements, you're hey, maybe I don't want to work with this person, or at least you get to know these people's names, and if you see them at a conference, you can be hey, we've discussed a couple things. I don't know, I think that it's great for networking, just kind of organically. I don't know what other people think.
Yeah, I agree, and I think the feature set around following other scientists or being connected to them. I think we probably will get into that eventually. There's even stuff we could do where maybe in order to follow Edwin, I need to give Edwin 5 RSC or something like that. And we could make a business model out of that potentially. But yeah, I think the network effects are big, and how we help people connect to each other and change their actual real lives. I think that's important.
We have to go burn tokens to follow people. Deflationary pressure.
Yeah, that would be good. Hopefully, if the SEC can tell us we're allowed to have burning tokens. It's such an interesting thing. I could just send tokens to a null wallet, but yeah.
They're coming up with a new crypto regulation thing, and apparently it was mostly written by Bitcoin maxis. So we're gonna see a lot of security regulations covering altcoins like ours, which is terrible. But
yeah, I'm sure. We've been very safe though, so we should be good. Yeah, I guess we're 1 minute over now. So Satvik, to finish it off.
Yeah, I was just on the point of recruiting, and as Ricardo said, that we shouldn't completely discard freemium. There's this company in India specifically that's Internshala. That's the internship market was completely distributed sort of like you're describing the science job market right now. So this one company sort of aggregated all the internship jobs, and then everyone seeking an internship came to them. So now they've monetized on both ends of the spectrum, wherein if you are a paying sort of student, you get access to it, access to premium jobs like a week before everyone else does. And if you are a paying company, you get to access you get to directly access the smartest people who you would want to apply, who may or may not apply if you are just a normal company putting out a job listing. So that is something that we may also look into, because freemium doesn't just have to be about the people applying to jobs. It could also be for the people, like for the companies looking for people. So, yeah.
I think also like another thing that I wanted to add in on the freemium, that's just the last one. I think freemium shouldn't be the main kind of like revenue generation thing, but it's a great tool that you can kind of like add, as a context, like as something like as a side, and doesn't have to be, that feature that really like makes it or break it for you. So it could be, it could have bounties, and then if there are some users that would love to have other, features, why not allowing them to have something more than other people, and be allowed to pay for having something more.
Yeah, and I think that's how LinkedIn does it, right? It's probably like the best way.
You can use it, almost completely. But then if you want to send a DM to someone that is not in your connections, then you have to have the premium, and you could just like completely disregard it. Or if you like it, you're just gonna subscribe for a month, and then you unsubscribe. So yeah.
By the way, why do we not allow people to message each other on ResearchHub?
It's just another feature to build. I think we'll definitely get there eventually, like having some kind of DM thing, or even like a chat for a hub, I think would be cool. But yeah, just building another feature that is lower priority than some other things. Cool. Yeah, and I totally agree that like freemium, it's a good complementary feature. Probably not the thing that we want to have be our main revenue stream, but could definitely be a supplementary one in the future for sure. Cool. Yeah, so I guess any other closing thoughts or feedback for the team before we get out of here? Great, thank you all. Yeah, and next week we'll be doing a journal club during the community call. So I know a bunch of people have like added commentary already, but the more that we have up there, I think probably the better the conversation will be. And I'll spend some time this week like marketing it. So hopefully we'll get some people from like outside the ResearchHub community to show up too. So should be exciting.
I'm excited about this one.
Yeah,
we're bringing our church next.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so he's got a lot of papers to discuss. So
he's a big one. He's really a big one. So yeah, really excited for the next journal club.
Awesome.
Yeah. And if anybody wants to host journal clubs on the side, let me know and we can do like bounties for it too. Because I think the more like social activities that we have, especially ones that generate content, the more fun it'll be to be part of ResearchHub. So yeah, if you want to, please hit me up and we can make it happen. Cool. Yeah, so I guess I'll see everybody next week.
Bye guys.
Bye everyone.